They say the bond of blood is strong, but the bond of the Anda, the blood oath, is unbreakable. Temujin and Jamukha were not just friends. They were one soul in two bodies. They slept under the same blanket, ate from the same bowl, and fought back to back against a world that wanted them dead. After rescuing Temujin's wife from the Merkits, they ruled together. It was a golden age, or so it seemed. But the steppe is vast, and the sky is endless. Yet, even the sky cannot hold two suns. It started with a whisper, not of war, but of philosophy. Jamukha was a noble, a believer in the old ways. To him, pedigree was everything. If you were born a shepherd, you died a shepherd. If you were born a noble, you ruled. Temujin, however, had seen the bottom of the abyss. He had been a slave. He knew that loyalty was not found in bloodlines, but in the heart. He began to promote commoners, slaves, and outcasts to positions of power simply because they were talented. This was not just a difference of opinion. It was an insult to everything Jamukha stood for. One spring morning, as the tribe was migrating to summer pastures, Jamukha rode beside Temujin. He didn't look at him. He looked at the horizon and spoke a riddle that would slice their brotherhood in half. Temujin, my Anda, if we camp near the mountains, our horses will get strong. If we camp near the river, our sheep will get fat. Temujin stopped his horse. He understood. The horses represented the warrior nobility, Jamukha's people. The sheep represented the common folk, Temujin's people. Jamukha was telling him, we are different. Go your own way. That night, without a word of goodbye, Temujin ordered his followers to pack. They moved away in silence under the moonlight. The camp split in two. The brotherhood was dead. The war for the soul of Mongolia had begun. Separation turned to rivalry. Rivalry turned to hatred. Jamukha was not just a warrior, he was a master politician. He gathered the old aristocrats, the tribes who feared Temujin's radical new meritocracy. They called Temujin a rebel, a breaker of traditions. The first clash was inevitable. The Battle of Dalen Balsut. History often skips this part. We like to think of Genghis Khan as invincible. But here, he was young, inexperienced, and outnumbered. Jamukha brought 30,000 men. Temujin could barely muster a defense. It was a massacre. Temujin's forces were shattered. He was forced to retreat, humiliated, hiding in the ravines like a wounded wolf. But Jamukha made a mistake that day, a mistake that would cost him everything. Victorious, Jamukha wanted to send a message. He wanted to show the steppe what happens to those who follow a rebel like Temujin. He took 70 young princes from the Chinos clan boys who had sided with Temujin and ordered 70 large cauldrons to be filled with water. As the water boiled, screaming into the cold air, Jamukha watched without blinking. He boiled the princes alive. The smell of cooking meat hung over the steppe for days. It was meant to instill fear. It was meant to say submit or burn. But Jamukha miscalculated the human heart. Terror does not create loyalty. It creates monsters, and it creates martyrs. When news of this atrocity reached the scattered remnants of Temujin's army, they didn't flee. They got angry. A cold, hard resolve settled in their bones. They realized that Temujin was not just a leader. He was their only shield against a psychopath. Temujin, listening to the reports of the boiling cauldrons, didn't scream. He didn't cry. he went silent. The boy who wanted to survive was gone. The Khan who would punish the world was waking up. Defeated, exiled, and hunted, Temujin was pushed to the very edge of existence. He retreated to the murky, muddy waters of Lake Baljuna. He had only a handful of men left, a motley crew of different tribes, different religions, and different races. There were Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and shamans. There were black men, white men, and golden-skinned men. They had no food. They hunted wild horses and drank the muddy water of the lake, squeezing the silt through their clothes. In this lowest moment, Temujin stood before them. He raised a cup of that muddy water. He didn't promise them gold. He didn't promise them women or titles. He promised them justice. "If you stay with me," he said, "I swear by the eternal blue sky, I will share my food with you. I will share my coat with you. If I eat the sweet, you will eat the sweet. If I eat the bitter, you will eat the bitter. And when we rule, no man will be above the law, not even me." This was the Baljuna Covenant. It was the birth of the modern Mongol nation. For the first time in history, a leader swore loyalty to his men, not the other way around. While Jamukha feasted in golden tents with arrogant nobles who secretly plotted against him, Temujin was forging a brotherhood of steel in the mud. He was building an army where a stable boy could become a general if he had the skill. The tide was turning. The wind was changing direction. The people of the steppe began to whisper. They whispered that Jamukha was the past, but Temujin was the future. Years passed. The army of the mud grew into a terrifying force. Temujin reorganized his entire society. He broke the tribal lines. He created the Ming system units of 1,000, mixed from different tribes, so that their only loyalty was to the Khan. Jamukha saw this rising tide. He was terrified. He formed a massive coalition, the coalition of the shadow. Every enemy Temujin had ever made joined Jamukha. Naimans, Merkits, Tatars. It was a force that could crush mountains. But Temujin had a weapon Jamukha didn't understand: psychology. Before the final battle, Temujin ordered his men to light 5 campfires each instead of 1. At night, from the enemy ridges, it looked as if the stars themselves had fallen to earth. Jamukha's scouts reported an army larger than the gods could count. Fear began to rot the coalition from the inside. Then Temujin played his masterstroke. He knew Jamukha's coalition was fragile, a group of selfish nobles who hated each other almost as much as they hated Temujin. He sent spies to spread rumors of betrayal. "The Naimans are leaving tonight. Jamukha has made a deal with Temujin to sell you out. Paranoia is a potent poison." Before a single arrow was fired, Jamukha's army was already fighting itself. The Battle of Chakermont. The sky turned black. A storm, violent and chaotic, broke over the battlefield, as if Tengri himself was watching. The ground turned to sludge. Horses slipped. Bowstrings became wet and useless. This was no longer a battle of elegance. It was a brawl in the mud. Jamukha was a brilliant tactician, perhaps even better than Temujin, but his army had no soul. When the storm hit, the nobles looked for a way to save their own skins. They didn't care about Jamukha. Temujin's men, however, fought like demons. They weren't fighting for a lord. They were fighting for the man who drank muddy water with them. They were fighting for their own existence. Temujin led the charge himself, the wolf formation. They tore through the disorganized ranks of the coalition. Amidst the thunder and the screams of dying men, Jamukha realized the truth. He looked around and saw his loyal allies fleeing. He saw his noble generals surrendering. He was alone. The sun of Jamukha was setting. The sun of Genghis Khan was rising red as blood. Jamukha fled. He spent a winter hiding in the woods, a fallen king. In the end, his own men captured him. They brought him to Temujin, expecting a reward. Temujin looked at the traitors who had bound their own master. He didn't smile. He ordered them executed immediately. "A man who betrays his own lord will never be loyal to me," he said. Then there were only two of them left, Temujin and Jamukha, the two sons. It was a quiet spring day. No guards, no executioners. Just two old friends sitting on the grass, years of blood and betrayal between them. Temujin offered mercy. "Let us be friends again," he said. "Let us rule together. I have forgotten the past." And perhaps he meant it. Perhaps the part of him that was still human desperately wanted his brother back. But Jamukha smiled, a sad, knowing smile. He shook his head. "My Anda, there is only one sun in the sky. If I live, I will be the louse in your collar, the thorn in your coat. I will always be a rallying point for your enemies. For you to have peace, I must die." Jamukha asked for only one thing, a noble death. In Mongol tradition, to spill noble blood on the ground was a sacrilege. "Let me die without shedding blood," Jamukha said. "Break my back so my spirit can fly to the eternal blue sky." Temujin nodded, tears streaming down his face. He embraced his brother one last time, the man he loved most in the world, the man he had to kill to become the king of the world. The sound of a breaking back is a terrible sound, but the silence that followed was worse. Jamukha was buried with the honors of a king, and Temujin descended from that hill alone. The last piece of his heart was buried in that grave. Now there was nothing left to hold him back. The steppe was united. The world was next.